Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my most favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that'll have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. Today we are looking at Uncanny X-Men 215 from 1986. Now, I am using a new microphone, so I'm hoping that you can hear me very well. I have tested it several times, so you'll let me know if it doesn't work out for you. But I decided to use. I was wearing a headset before, and now I actually got me a little fancy microphone from Amazon. So hopefully you guys will let me know. So Uncanny X-Men 215 here is done by Alan Davis. The pencils with Paul Neary, rest in peace, Paul Neary, and introduces the super soldier. So we've got Stonewall here, we've got Super Saber, and we've got the Crimson Commando. I almost said Dynamo, but wrong. And I love this, his eyes looking this way instead of that's actually pretty cool here. And Alan Davis comes from Detective Comics to X-Men. So Alan Davis used to do Marvel UK, so he is a British import, or would it be a British export? Um, anyway, yeah, export. And he goes to DC Comics. He is doing Batman and the Outsiders. Then he goes and does Detective Comics, and then he leaves Detective Comics and comes to Marvel. But he really doesn't do a lot of stuff until Excalibur. Excalibur, I think, is his first true monthly at Marvel. And sometimes I wonder if he would have, how good he would have even, or Uncanny X-Men would have been. I mean, it was already a top seller, but can you imagine if we would have had Alan Davis's clean pencils? And I know we're about to get into the Mark Silvestri era, but Alan Davis, I think, at least at this time, is a better penciler than Mark Silvestri was. So, not to take anything away from Silvestri, but Davis definitely had the prettier pencil line, at least during this time here. And Dan Green actually does the cover here, DG. And so we start out with Madeline Pryor and the airplane crash here, and this was in San Francisco, and this airplane is going down and crashing here, regardless of what she tries here, and everyone except her dies. Now, the thing about this is that this was the same day as the Phoenix had crashed in New York. So, and you can see here that Chris Claremont had already the ideas in place of what he was going to do with Madeline Pryor. Now, Madeline Pryor was not supposed to be what she ended up turning into. That was due to she was supposed to be just a regular person. But when Cyclops was taken by X Factor in the Marvel editorial, he was like, well, what the heck am I going to do with Madeline Pryor? And I think he got the ideas that would eventually become Inferno. But for now, he's putting in the groundwork here. And so you can see the paramedics, but the paramedics are actually Scalp Hunter and Arclight here. And she goes, my baby, where's my baby? What have you done to my son? Now, keep in mind that Madeline Pryor had disappeared. So this here we assume is like a psychic manifestation of that day here. And so she slaps here Arclight and comes out. And you can see that Scalp Hunter and Arclight go after her, and you can see fog is starting to um, uh, start there. And so they keep chasing her, and she hides, and then hits her with the tin garbage can. And of course, Scalp Hunter says, Skirt has nice moves. And so Arclight creates like a little earthquake. And then here comes Scalp Hunter. And he is loading his weapon, which I think he makes from his own parts. And then he is going to shoot her. You see this boom here. And suddenly, I love this panel here. Dreams end, memories end, life ends. So then we get to our title. Now, this when I was reading this in middle school, I was so lost because this just continues on at another time, and back in the day, I had no idea about subplots. So old soldiers, and you can see Rogue carrying Colossus. Of course, this is after the Mutant Massacre. I have a playlist available for you. I have an X-Men playlist. I have a New Mutants playlist. I have a Wolverine playlist. I have an X Factor playlist. Everything is in reading order. I also have an X Universe playlist where I put everything together. So it's one playlist, and everything there is in reading order. And so Rogue says, last one, Storm. Once Colossus is loaded aboard, we'll be ready. Now, Colossus is paralyzed. And we've got Kitty, who is like a ghost, and Nightcrawler, who's in a coma. And here we have Callisto and a little bit of screen tone being applied. And Psylocke says, I'm monitoring Colossus' thoughts, Storm. Thus far, all is well. And she thanks Psylocke. And so Psylocke continues, do you think it's wise, Ororo, to split the X-Men's forces, especially with the Marauders liable to attack again at any time? And Storm continues, that, Elizabeth, is precisely why we must. Our wounded will be safer at Moira McTaggart's mutant research facility in Scotland. That's Muir Isle. I want your group to escort them there. Now, here we have our credits. Chris Claremont, Alan Davis. Oh, Dan Green does the inks. I know he did the cover, but he is still the inker. I love the dry brush being applied here. Tom Orzechowski, one of the greatest letterers. Him and Kevin Kline and John Workman, I think, are the Holy Trinity. And then Anna Senti and Jim Shooter, by the way, rest in peace, Jim Shooter. He continues the editorial. Also, Dan Green has passed away as well, so rest in peace, Dan. And Rogue says, here you go, big guy, snug as a bug in a rug. How's Nightcrawler and Shadowcat, Callisto? And she says, alive, no change in either of them, for better or for worse. Wonder if this evac's worth the efforts. Marauders will find us no matter where we run. And Rogue says, your Morlocks, Cal, and these 3 X-Men need a proper hospital. Moira is the only one we got. And so Storm says something. I'm sorry, I was trying to see who it is that was talking. And Storm says, Callista goes because she wishes to remain by her few remaining Morlocks. You go, Elizabeth, because your psi powers will hopefully provide warning of any attack. Rogue, because she has the raw power to repel any such attack. And so Longshot now officially with Dazzler joined the X-Men, Longshot joined in Uncanny X-Men Annual number 10, and Dazzler joined the previous issue in X-Men 214. And so Storm continues here. Longshot is an unknown quantity. I instinctively wish to accept him. The longer he remains with us, the more he seems to belong. And yet, and so she looks that way. Can we afford to take anything, or anyone at face value? And then there's Dazzler. And so Psylocke speaks telepathically here. That's what this sort of does. You still resent her for being Malice's catspaw. And Storm says, no, Elizabeth, I do not resent her. But I do not trust her either. Not entirely, not yet, any more than I truly trust myself. And Psylocke says, then what hope have we as a team? And Storm says, that is what I must learn while the rest of you are gone. So Longshot goes to Storm and says, I really like this place, Storm, and the X-Men. It's as if here was where I was always meant to be. I feel so sad to go away. And Dazzler says, me too. I've barely arrived. And already you guys are trying to get rid of me. And she's got the shirt that says Leela. Or is it Lila? I don't know. But regardless, that's the band that she was performing with. Because she could no longer be... Or she was hiding because she's a mutant. And Storm says, hardly that, Allison, and not for long. We shall be together again before you know it. And Rogue says, cargo secured, boss. You all want to climb aboard, people? I want to be airborne while it's still nightfall, says Rogue. And so you can see them here getting ready to go, and just a big smile from Longshot. And Psylocke says, Storm's argument makes perfect sense, yet I wish I was not leaving her. And Rogue says, I know, Bets. I got the same bad feeling. And right now, she and Wolverine are the core of the team. If they can pull their heads back together, the rest... if they can't pull their heads back together, the rest of us ain't got a saint's prayer. Beautiful dry brush down there. And so the Blackbird takes off, and Wolverine kind of looks away. He's having his cigarette or cigar. No, a cigarette. And Rogue says, you have not spoken, Wolverine, since we returned from Dallas with Allison. And he says, nothing much to say. And Storm continues, we have hardly seen you. And of course, he says, and I love this here with him sitting, figured that was safest. I nearly killed you, Ororo, after that Malice caper. Of course, that was last issue. And Storm says, that was not your fault. And Wolverine says, so you say. I love the black eyes there. And Storm continues, Logan, I have a job to do upstate. I will go alone if I must, but I prefer having someone to cover my back. And she says, there's no one I trust more than you. And so you can see she reaches her hand, and he just kind of gets up and says, let's go then, and tosses his cigarette here. So that's pretty cool here. And so now we are back with Madeline. So she, as I mentioned before, she was having, I guess, that psychic dream here that that began the issue, because of course she had survived that big 747 crash here. So the police say, I never worked with a living legend before, Doctor. Flatterer, I love it. Patient was admitted as a Jane Doe. We haven't identified her since, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Initial prognosis was pretty bleak. Severe trauma, massive blood loss. Nobody thought she'd last the night, but she surprised us. In fact, physically, she's well on her way to recovery. Unfortunately, she's maintaining this deep comatose state, resisting all efforts to bring her out of it. And so the doctor continues, we've done all we can for her, and we need the bed space, especially since this Jane Doe As Jane Doe, the state picks up the tab. Doctors always worried about money. So next week we'll be transferring her to a custodial facility, and so she starts waking up here, and she goes, "I'm alive," and the doctor says, "Very much so, and quite well to do." And so he says he's Dr. Schwartz, and this is Dr. Dwayne, and she says, "We're glad to meet you, miss," and she says, "Pryor. My name is Madeline Pryor." And so we are at the time in X Factor where Cyclops is looking for Madeline Pryor. So it's kind of funny because he doesn't know where she is, and of course, and that was in starting in X Factor 13. So X Factor 13 and 14, he is searching for Maddie, and he doesn't find her. And of course, Chris Claremont has her up in San Francisco. So we're now in upstate New York, and Storm says, "We have to work through this, Logan, or Betsy is right. We're finished as a team, as individuals." Nice vertical panel here. And look at the smoke here. "Goddess consigned malice to eternal abyss. That marauder witch has done her work well." And Storm continues, "By causing us to distrust each other in one action, she has done more than cripple the X-Men than all her teammates put together." And he says, "Ain't that the truth?" So he's chain smoking one cigarette, and then the other one is lighting it up. "I was hoping for better from you." And Wolverine says, "You don't understand. That moment in the alley when I nearly killed you, I couldn't tell who was friend or foe." And Storm says, "None of us could, not even Psylocke." "You're missing the point," says Wolverine. "If I can't trust my senses, how the blazes can I trust anyone? I lose them, Ororo. What's left?" And Storm says, "We have arrived." And so they pull up here, and you see like this charred place here. At least we know why the lady wouldn't answer the phone. And so this is where Jean Grey's sister was living, and her house blew up, and we saw that in X Factor. So if you're only following me on X-Men, in X Factor, her house was blown up here. And so Storm says, "The fire looks fairly recent. We had best search the rubble for any signs of survivors or victims, or, as importantly, clues to the identity of those responsible. Sarah was an outspoken advocate of mutant rights that may have precipitated an attack," and that's actually what it was. Or, and then she continues, "Or it could have been the Marauders striking through us through Sarah because her younger sister Jean was a charter member of the X-Men. Or it could have been an accident." And Wolverine says, "Nope. I marked strong traces of dynamite and gasoline. It was a bomb. No death sense, though." And Storm says, "Thank heavens for small favors. Always we react. Always our foes have the initiative. Always the battles are fought on their terms. That too must change." And she thinks here, if we are being attacked through our friends, everyone we know is in danger. They must be warned. Even Forge. So easy, so fitting amidst chaos and disasters to think of him. So that's actually gonna set up in X-Men 220, where Storm is actually gonna go visit him, which is gonna be the start of her regaining her powers. So, and so she continues here. "His devices tore my elemental powers from me. He offered me to find a way to restore them. Has the time come, I wonder, to swallow my pride, set aside my rage, and hurt and hate, and accept to fly again? Is that truly what I want? Or do I hold back because I'm afraid?" So we have, of course, covered that. We have been doing X-Men pretty much in order from the very beginning. So if you go to that X-Men playlist, I start with Classic X-Men #1 and have all the way through. So I've even covered the annuals. And so you see Wolverine kind of down here, and he is going to have a thought here. Storm's twitchy. So am I. I can't figure why. Sarah's scent is cold. I think she split before the blast. And he continues, someone else wasn't so lucky. Two people, Cyclops. And of course, she says, and a female. No, not again. So here's the thing, they don't know Jean Grey is alive, and he had her sent in the Morlock tunnels, and he thought he was going crazy. And the funny thing is, X Factor has been on TV, and you would think that they would have seen the commercials and seen that she was in there, but he's like, not again. It can't be. And she tries to grab him. Says, Wolverine, Logan, what? And he thinks he's going crazy, and he says, not her, not Jean, and kind of hits her, and maybe not on purpose, but it wasn't really an accident. He's just going crazy. He can't believe what he is seeing. He starts running, and here Chris Claremont says, how can Jean Grey possibly be alive? And so that's kind of the thoughts that are going through him. So the Blackbird is heading toward Muir Isle. The X-Men are asleep, and you can see Kitty Pryde is going through, and of course everybody has a crush on a long shot here, and she no longer has a body. She's sort of like a living ghost, and so the fear is that she is going to eventually disappear. And so Rogue says, hey, Pride, back to your life cell pronto. You know how dangerous it is wandering about in your condition. And so she gives him a kiss to Longshot because she thinks she's so pretty. And then he wakes up. He goes, he felt that, and leaves. And he's like, come back. And Longshot says, Rogue, when she touched me, my mind filled with images of her past, as if I could read who she was. The same I've been doing with the X-Men. There was a sense of future too, but it was all jumbled, chaos riven, and broken to bits, and surrounded by an awful void that hungers for her. Rogue, is that death? And she's like, could be. Poor little kid. I love the screen tones and the color being applied here. Very cool. And so Storm starts to wake up here and says, Wolverine went berserk. He struck me. And then she sees she is in some cuffs here. And she goes, obviously, something has happened to me since then. And she says, old dungeons, new chains. Whoever put me here is either supremely overconfident or very careless. I have my lockpicks. Of course, she used to be a thief here. And so she takes off the cuffs here, or the manacles here, and she's still wondering what Wolverine found in Sarah's house. And so she pulls up here, doesn't see anything, and she goes, is Wolverine here? And if he is, do I dare trust him? And then she continues thinking here, what is that? And sees this woman here. And now you can see that Storm during this time had the mohawk here, which Alan Davis is drawing beautifully here. And she says, a young woman, I think. And Storm kind of leaves here and says, best to leave her asleep while I learn more about where we are and who holds us. Then we can make our escape. What is this place? I wish Wolverine were here. I could use his enhanced senses and scouting skill. If he recovers himself, will he follow my trail? Any other time I would count on that as a certainty. Now though, so she goes up, and you can see it's like a loft, or like a lodge, almost a cabin per se here. And you can see, as she says, it's a hunting lodge. And you can see like she says, warriors, and so they're actually soldiers, which is why they're called old soldiers. And so she's kind of looking through, but sees them coming here. So she jumps up here, and these two haven't are talking here, and says, the boy was so predictable. And Stonewall says they can't all be the classic Hunt Saber. And he says, I wish he hadn't begged. I hate it when they beg. A man should face his fate like a man. He says, there are only two. And of course, the Crimson Commando was right behind him. And he goes, snooping's against the rules. You break the rules, naughty girl, you get punished. Now, these three are going to end up in Freedom Force for a bit here. And so she kicks him here. And you can see he uses a little judo and flips her. And Stonewall says, losing your touch, old chum. And so she's going to try and get away. But of course, Super Saber is a speedster and goes the other way. And he's still there. And so he introduces himself, says, I'm Super Saber. And he's fast, so he doesn't even lay a punch. But the sound waves cause the air pressure to change and pushes her. And then hits him, which he's like a wall here. And so he's like, you better quit. And so she gouges his eyes, and then she does a flip and grabs so he can't move, kind of like the Blob. So she pulls it under him and makes him fall. So Storm, of course, very smart. And so she's about to get away, but of course here's Super Saber, who grabs her and then knocks her down with a snap here. And so, all right. And so we're going to get an explanation here, but I'm going to actually be brief here. And so they're former soldiers here from World War II, and they, as I mentioned, World War II, and they wanted to keep fighting, but they were forced to retire, so they did as they were told. A little bit of right wingers with each passing year, society, the country we loved, was going down the drain. No more morals, no standards, no respect for tradition. Sex, drugs, disease, people dressed and acting like animals. So, all the tropes here. And here, that girl is begging here. And of course, we're going to know that they're not doing it just because of how they look. And so, the girl is actually from one of the finest families. And her boyfriend, whom they killed, and so sorry, I should have mentioned that in the previous page here, that she was asking about her boyfriend, and they're like, he's dead, we killed him. And so anyway, he explains that her and her boyfriend dealt in drugs. They were major drug dealers, and they didn't need the money, they did it for the thrill. And they were caught, but the family connections, they got them loose. And so they're saying they grabbed Storm because they were at the house fire, and so they assumed she was looting. And Storm says, the family who lived there were friends, and those possessions possible evidence to tell me who set the fire. If you thought me a criminal, you were mistaken. And so she takes off the sweater and then puts on just the vest. But I know I know even if you accepted my story, you cannot afford to release me. I know too much. So to protect your pathetic little games, even innocence must be sacrificed. And so one of the first things she does is, I wish I had kept my sweater because it's starting to get cold. And Priscilla's like, I think my feet are broken. So she says, we gotta keep moving here, and we have to, separate from them. And of course, here they come. Next issue, Crucible. So, I love this era of X-Men. So, this is the X-Men when I was growing up. I was in middle school during this. So, Uncanny X-Men 215 by Chris Claremont. Alan Davis, and inked by Dan Green. Like and subscribe, and I do thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.